All right. Welcome to Sideboard MTG. Today, I've got a deck tech for you, and it's Sultai Reanimator. If you've been watching the channel for a couple days now, you've seen I've been playing around with the deck. Now, finally found the 75 card list that I like, and I've got that for you here today. So let's jump straight into the deck. If you like the deck, give it a thumbs up, and if you want to subscribe, go ahead and do that. Now, with the banning of Attune with Ether and Rogue Refiner and Ramunap Ruins and Rampaging Ferocidon, it's opened up a whole new world for us. So, with this deck, we're a Reanimator. We're going to be throwing some really high value cards, and maybe we should just start with those first, because we've got some really good cards to throw in the graveyard and to bring back. And the goal here is, of course, to bring those back on turn 5 with Liliana, or we can bring them back with the Scarab God, or if we get lucky, we can bring them back with Demon of Dark Schemes. However, we're not really worried about bringing things back with Demon of Dark Schemes. However, that is there. This card actually just really murders the current meta with everyone trying to go wide with a bunch of little vampires and things like that. And remember, you can't Adanto's Vanguard to protect yourself from neg 1, neg 1s. So this just does a really good job at wiping the board. No, it doesn't kill the 3 power or the 3 toughness creatures, but there are a lot of 2 toughness creatures being played right now. And Demon of Dark Schemes actually warranted a second spot in the deck. So we're running 2 Demon of Dark Schemes. We've got 1 Tetsamok Primal Death here. Now, Tetsamok's one of those cards that you can have early in your hand, and you can use Tetsamok to start putting down some pressure, even though you don't actually put down cards onto the battlefield. Putting these counters down, it really pressures the opponent that they have to do certain things before this happens. Before turn 6 gets there, they have to be able to do that. But we can kind of cheat by putting a couple down and then, like, say, playing a turn 4 board wipe and a Champion of Wits, throwing it away and then bringing it back a turn early. Or they're put into a position where they can't cast creatures because they don't want you to put a prey counter on them so they don't die. Either way, it helps us get into the late game, and when we can get into the late game like that, either they swarm the board into our board wipe, or they do not play their creatures for fear of Tetsamok. It's just really, really fun to watch players try to play around this prey counter and stuff. And I've had a lot of fun with Tetsamok, and I just really, really love having this in an opening hand. It's a creature that normally when you're caught with these big creatures in your opening hand, it's not really that great for you. But this deck actually has many ways to put that to your advantage, and Tetsamok is one of those ways. So I really, really liked having him. And even drawing them late in the game, you can normally put a couple counters on and use some other interaction on the battlefield, but if you're just top decking him, you may be able to put a counter on and play him. That's a 6/6 with Death Touch that might kill something when it enters the battlefield. So really, really good. The other card we have here on the top in the 6 drop is Noxious Gearhulk. Now, this is just a one of, but I found that with a lot of dinosaurs and things like that, it was really good that we had at least some way to gain a little extra life in the main board. And probably the sickest trick that I have done with him was I swung with Ghalta and then used Liliana to bring a Noxious Gearhulk back from the graveyard and gain 12 life from the Ghalta, and that pretty much calls the scoop right there. We meant to mention Ghalta, Primal Hunger here. Ghalta is the mother of green dinosaurs, if you will. If you say it, if it's a mother, if it's a, I don't know, but Ghalta, the primal, this elder dinosaur, Primal Hunger, amazing. And when you can throw this in the graveyard, this is a must answer, and that's kind of what this deck's all about, is getting must answers into the graveyard. And this is a must answer. You will not be chump blocking Ghalta, or at least not for long. The same can be said for Razakath. Now, yes, it's not a 12/12, and we can't really cheat it into play. But I will say that if we do, well, we can cheat it into play with Liliana, but not the way that Ghalta can be. But if we do cheat in a Razakath, that makes even with no other creature on the battlefield, Ghalta is extremely cheap to cast at that point. You know, taking 8 converted mana cost off of Ghalta leaves us at 5, and that's not very hard to do. Same for Nizahal, Primal Tide. Now, I was really happy to be able to throw 2 of the Primal Dinosaurs, or the Elder Dinosaurs, in the deck, but Nizahal just really fit. The discard 3 cards ability surprised me at how good it was, and when we actually had it in the main deck, and we come across a control deck, we're holding a lot of really dead cards anyway, so being able to pitch those late game, because we were trying to pitch, you know, creatures that we wanted to bring back early, is just absolutely phenomenal. So I really liked having the Primal Tide here in the deck. So Nizahal is just really good, and at one point it was in the sideboard, but there are a lot of people trying to fight against the tribes that are coming up right now, so there are some control decks going on, and that's another thing that I really like about Nizahal and some of our other big threats here. Our 3 main threats all survive any damage-based board wipes, other than, of course, 20 damage to all. The Star of Extinction will kill all dinosaurs, but other than that, though, the Razakath giving us the ability to pull cards, to just go search for that one individual card, and Razakath gives us a sack option. So let's go talk about that sack option a little bit, okay? Alright. Now, moving on down in the curve here, we get to all the goodies that you'll be playing in order to get those other cards out. Now, this is the bulk of the deck, and here's where the fun and the magic really happens. You know, we do have Journey to Eternity. I'll pull that up here. That preview is a little bit small on these. But you enchant a creature you control. When enchanted creature dies, return it to the battlefield under your control, then return Journey to Eternity to the battlefield transformed under your control. Now, this is terrific because we can put it on cards like Ravenous Chupacabra, which would then create a blocker or just instantly put us into a board stall scenario. Even if they have 3 or 4 creatures, they may not be interested into attacking into a Ravenous Chupacabra that has a Journey to Eternity on it. So it really puts down the brakes on the opponent really quick, and even if you're just putting it on something like a Champion of Wits, which is one of our cards that we use to put those must answers into the graveyard so that we can have that early access to them. Now, we can also do that with strategic planning, where most of the time we'll turn to a strategic planning and just dig for a land. Pitching the rest of the cards into the graveyard is not really that big of a deal for us. And then Search for Ghalta, again, flip card here, I'll pull that up. Search for Ghalta allows us to look at the top card of our library every turn and then decide whether or not we want to pitch it or keep it. And this gives us a lot of card selection, and once it's down, it just kind of goes into action. And sometimes you may actually decide you do not want to flip it. However, when you do flip it, there are a number of cards that we can go get, including Fatal Push, Strategic Planning. Liliana herself can be, tutored up with this if it was in the top 4 cards. And then we have Yahini's Expertise, which could possibly be your saving grace if you're looking for this card. Then, this card is just terrific. Now, I will say a little bit about the way it stacks. If you do not have a creature that has at least 4 power on the battlefield, you'll not be able to cast the Journey to Eternity off of it because your creature will have died. So if you have maybe a Chupacabra or a Gonti, Lord of Luxury, or your Hostage Taker, maybe a Champion of Wits on the battlefield, those creatures will die before Journey to Eternity can actually be put onto the stack and targeted. So that is something that you would have to worry about, but I do not believe that Magic will even allow you to if you do not have a valid creature. So I don't believe you'll be able to put it onto the stack, so I don't think you can even make that mistake. However, I just wanted to point out that interaction. And another card that can be searched up here, of course, is Vraska's Contempt. With the fact that we run the Scarab God and Liliana, the Scarab God mainly, Confiscation Coup may not be at the height that it was before, but it is still something to be wary of. And for us to lose the Scarab God would be very, very devastating. So having a Vraska's Contempt is very, very good here. Now, there are a couple other cards that you might want to consider if you do not have Vraska's Contempt, and then one of River's Rebuke did find its way in the deck for a small time, and then later it just became a Vraska's Contempt. But River's Rebuke would also allow you to return your the Scarab God to your hand, and then any other good way to kill him. Now, you will see this one of main board Doomfall here, as it combos so well with Yahenni's Expertise, where you can wipe the board, and if there's a singleton creature left, you can put this onto the stack and then take that out as well. So if they did perhaps have 3 energy for a Bristling Hydra that they got off of the Long Tusk Cub and stuff, and they decided they wanted to keep the Bristling Hydra, you can then follow that up with the Doomfall, and they have to make their decision before they even know that you have selected a card. So as the 3 neg-1/1 counters come down, you get to select the card. So they have to respond to that first. So don't just automatically show the card that you're going to be doing. Just play the Yahenni's Expertise, ask if it resolves, and once it resolves, then you are then given the option whether or not to place a 3 mana or less spell onto the stack. So make sure you guys play that like that, and it'll help you get through with that interaction. Other than that, that is the main board. There's a couple little things in the land base that I'd like to point out here. We've got 3 Blooming Marsh and a Botanical Sanctum, 4 Drowned Catacombs, 2 Evolving Wilds, 4 Fetid Pools, and then 2 Field of Ruin. Now that's pretty much the height of the spiciness, except for our one of Hostile Desert. With us throwing cards into the graveyard so often and having the Evolving Wilds and things, I really liked having the one of Hostile Desert here, and I've only had it come in handy one time, but I've never actually had it become a hindrance, so therefore I've yet to take it out of the deck. You may decide that you do not like the card, but until it's actually become a hindrance to me, I have decided to leave it in the deck. And you will notice we only have the one of Forest, and that's so we can search it up with either our Field of Ruin or our Evolving Wilds. And not to mention the Evolving Wilds helps with our 2 Fatal Push. So that is the main deck. Let's look at the sideboard. Now, the sideboard is highly subject to change, as the meta is constantly shifting right now, with everyone trying to play all of these different strategies of tribal, and then people trying to defeat the tribes. So we've got a lot of interaction going on right now. So I've got one Naturalize here is just a good answer all to those enchantments and artifacts. Sometimes you need that a little bit earlier than getting a Vraska down. And if you don't have 2 Vraska, the other slot here was originally held by Torrential Gearhulk. So if you want to put a Torrential Gearhulk in the sideboard, I can 100% get behind that. And then we've got a couple Deathgorge Scavengers for a little extra life gain, and to be able to pick at some of those annoying things out of the graveyard. Particularly, I really like this against an Earthshaker Kenra, because Kenra comes down on 2, and then you can play this and regain that life if there's something you can eat, or if you kill the Kenra or something like that, then you can just remove it. So I really like this against those Earthshaker Kenra decks, and anything that really has a couple choice creatures in their graveyard or choice cards in their graveyard that you want to be able to remove. Now, if there is some kind of deck, like if the mirror becomes a thing, then this would probably just become crook, because you might want to remove the entire graveyard. Next we have Lost Legacy here. Lost Legacy is our answer to Approach, because Approach is still here. There is still a problem with Approach. Not a problem, but if you can't answer Approach, then you are more than likely just going to lose, and we are trying to go into the late game, so Approach will have its opportunity to be cast, and if we're not holding a Negate or a Supreme Will to deal with that, then we're going to be in some serious trouble. The last 3 spots here were filled by another copy of Doomfall, and then a singleton copy of Essence Extraction. You'll notice that the majority of the sideboard here is under 3 converted mana cost, because it allows it to fit into the Yahenni's Expertise really, really well, and most of these cards will be able to come in against the aggro decks, especially cards like Essence Extraction or Doomfall if they have a card that's particularly hard to answer. I will say that with Regisaur Alpha, remember that Everything will be removed if you cast the Doomfall off of a Yahenni's expertise. The token and most other small creatures that can come down before Regisaur Alpha will be removed. However, you do got to worry a little bit about that Ripjaw Raptor. It's a little too big, and you're probably going to need a Ravenous Chupacabra to deal with that. But we do have answers for it, and I think that this deck technically has answers to most things in the meta. That's kind of another reason for the Lost Legacies, because there's a lot of cards being played that we're not exactly ready for, and if we see them in Game 1, we can call them out in Game 2. Take, for example, like Path to Metal or something like that that we just really need to be able to get rid of. That's all I've got for today, guys. We'll be playing this in a league later tonight, so if you want to join in for that, we'd be happy to have you. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.